Hey, welcome back, everyone. Interesting episode today. We're going to go into the World Economic Forum, the meeting they just had, and Elon Musk's question of, well, are they really just an unelected government? And frankly, do you want them as your unelected government? It's an interesting discussion actually starting up right now that I think at this point has gone mainstream. They've had more pressure than ever before, and world leaders going there, including like FBI Director Christopher Wray, they're being called out for it now. We're going to go over what they're actually talking about, what is on the agenda, what they're actually saying they want to accomplish, what they're actually doing to our society, and debunk some of the actual misinformation going around and dig into what's really going on. Also, folks, some breaking news on Mike Pence now. Mike Pence had classified documents at his home, and this is one of those equivalence arguments. Hey, Joe Biden was vice president under Obama. He had classified documents. Well, Mike Pence had classified documents as vice president to Trump. It's an interesting argument, but is moot for a few reasons, which we'll go into. But also looks bad on Pence, who's been very much against Trump anyway. At the same time, we're going to go into the climate cartel, how that whole system works. And folks, yes, it is coming out now and it's public. It's no longer just a rumor. The global elites want us to eat bugs. And not just bugs, also lab-grown meat and lab-grown plants. We'll be talking about this, which if you've been watching this show for a while, I think we've been saying it for a while. Honestly, everything they're saying, everything that's coming out public now, I think most of us here have been talking about for a good amount of time now. So it's hitting the surface. That's what matters. It's hitting the surface. People are seeing this is what's going on, and here we are. So we'll go into it. First, though, folks, let's talk about the unelected world government. Let me show you a tweet from Elon Musk, because, the important thing with this is establishing the public debate. Elon Musk right now is the man in the arena, and ironically, the attacks against him made him even more so. What he posts becomes part of the mainstream discussion. And he's posting now specifically things against the World Economic Forum. He questioned something that I think is actually very important. He said this: WEF, i.e. World Economic Forum, is increasingly becoming an unelected world government that the people never asked for and don't want. And he published a poll as well. I'll show you the other tweet here. The poll raises the point, the World Economic Forum should control the world. And you can agree or you can disagree. 2.4 million people voted. Only 14% of people believe the World Economic Forum should control the world. I'd wonder who those people are. And 86% said no, they do not want the World Economic Forum to control the world. Epoch Times had some follow-up coverage on this, which I'll show you right now. It says, millions respond to poll asking if World Economic Forum should control the world. And it says this: in one of his posts on Twitter, Musk commented on an article that references the infamous WEF, World Economic Forum, associated slogan, "You'll own nothing and you'll be happy." I'm going to show you some of the original sources on that, by the way, in a bit. In fact, I'll show you their whole post on exactly what they were talking about, because they claim that this is misinformation. They say, we never said that. They deleted the web page. I found the web page, and I'll show it to you in a minute. But let's go into this a bit more. It says, many critics objected to the organization's attempt to frame a lack of personal ownership and privacy as something positive, with an ad generating a tidal wave of memes, many centered on the slogan, "You'll own nothing and you will be happy." Initially accompanied by a promotional video and several articles, much of the campaign's content has since been removed from the internet. We found it and I'll show it to you. Just give me a minute. It says a WEF, again World Economic Forum, post on Twitter expressing that idea remains online, while a video featuring 8 predictions for 2030 can still be viewed on the internet. The video contains the infamous tagline, "You'll own nothing and you'll be happy." And it says further in, besides taking a dim view of the WEF gathering, anti-globalists often criticize WEF founder and executive chairman Klaus Schwab for promoting a globalist agenda and for being an elitist who, it says, wants to centralize control of world affairs. They argue he is working to undermine national sovereignty and the ability of countries to make their own decisions. Critics say that Schwab is promoting a one world government agenda and that the WEF, World Economic Forum, is working to create a global governance structure that is controlled by a small group of powerful individuals and corporations. They also accuse him of promoting neoliberal economic policies that benefit the wealthy and powerful at the expense of the working class and the poor. The WEF says its mission is to improve the state of the world by engaging leaders in partnerships to shape global, regional, and industry agendas. And during the recent meeting they just had last week, there were roughly 52 heads of state or governments who attended, 19 central bank governors, and over 600 CEOs. Before we go further, folks, I want to show you these videos. We do have a sponsor today. Today's episode is brought to you by American Hartford Gold. Now, as we've been talking about, inflation is going to continue and likely get worse. I think it's on us already. Even Fed Chair Powell is warning us to brace ourselves. Well, there's one way to hedge against inflation. American Hartford Gold makes it easy and simple to diversify your savings and retirement accounts with physical gold and silver. With one short phone call, they can have physical gold and silver delivered right to your door or into your IRA or 401k. American Hartford Gold is one of the highest rated firms in the country with an A-plus rating from the BBB and thousands of satisfied clients. If you call them right now, they'll give you up to $2,500 of free silver and a free safe on qualifying orders, so don't wait, call them now. That's 877-260-2764. Again, 877-260-2764, or text Joshua to 65532. Again, that's 877-260-2764, or text Joshua to 65532. Now, folks, back to this. Let me show you something interesting. This is a 2016 tweet from the World Economic Forum. And now this is important because this whole slogan, "You'll own nothing and you'll be happy," it's disputed. The World Economic Forum, you'll see in many places, they claim they never said that. They claim the whole thing is fake. It's misinformation. In fact, they were actually even targeting people over this. They were going after people for this. And a lot of the legacy news outlets, the big corporate media, they claim this whole thing's fake. Let me show you some of the original sources. I'll just show you a tweet first from 2016. It says World Economic Forum. And this is one of the ways it's been spun. It's a little, they didn't say that exactly. It was different. It says, "Welcome to 2030. I own nothing. I have no privacy. And life has never been better." Look at those happy eyes. Of course, 2030 is important here because, as we have been discussing, the World Economic Forum has partnered with the United Nations on Agenda 2030. And Agenda 2030 being the United Nations program to kind of remake the world in man's image by 2030, of course, sets 2030 as the goal for a lot of these policies to be implemented. What they're talking about are these 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And those Sustainable Development Goals are basically the framework for a lot of what they're talking about. Let me see if I can pull up. Actually, I'll do this in a bit. Let me show you something interesting. Now, if you were to click the link on that tweet I just showed you, and by the way, that tweet was on the official, that was actually the official Twitter account of the World Economic Forum. So this is not some random thing I just pulled up from the internet. That's their official page. If you were to click that link, however, you'd get a broken URL. They deleted the page. They'd say there's nothing here. And it's based on that they say, hey, there's nothing public on the internet. This is obviously just one big conspiracy theory. Nobody ever said you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. Like it's just a big conspiracy theory. It's all misinformation. Let me show you the deleted web page because I found it for y'all. This right here is what they deleted. It says, "Welcome to 2030. I own nothing. I have no privacy, and life has never been better." The archive is still active. I'm showing you a web archive of when it was still up. And let's go over what they're talking about. This is from the World Economic Forum. This is what they're actually saying, and this is what they were criticized for, and they claim that they never said. They say, "Welcome to the year 2030. Welcome to my city," or should I say, our city. I don't own anything. I don't own a car. I don't own a house. I don't own any appliances or any clothes. It might seem odd to you, but it makes perfect sense for us in this city. Everything you considered a product has now become a service. I won't go over the whole thing because it's quite long, but further in it says, in our city, we don't pay any rent because someone else is using our free space whenever we don't need it, whenever we do not need it. My living room is used for business meetings when I'm not there. Shopping? I can't really remember what it is. For most of us, it has been turned into choosing things to use. Sometimes I find this fun, and sometimes I just want the algorithm to do it for me, i.e., letting a computer do it for you. It knows my tastes better than I do by now. The AI system knows what she wants more than she knows what she wants. Further, it states, my biggest concern is all the people who do not live in our city. Those we lost on the way, those who decided that it became too much, all this technology, those who felt obsolete and useless when robots and AI took over big parts of our jobs, those who get upset with the political system and turned against it. They live different kind of lives outside of the city. Some have formed little self-supplying communities. Others just stayed in the empty and abandoned houses in small 19th century villages. Once in a while, I get annoyed about the fact that I have no real privacy. Know where I go and not know where I can go and not be registered. I know that somewhere everything I do, think, and dream of is recorded. I just hope that nobody will use it against me. Yeah, so you want to go live in the World Economic Forum city? That's the dream. That's the WEF dream right there. That's the United Nations dream. Again, they did a full campaign on this. I won't read the whole thing because I'd be reading it for a good while, but you get the general idea. It is basically making it so they call it, just talking seriously, they call it a commodity-based economy. It's like a subscription. It's a subscription-based economy. So your toaster, your home, your car, your clothes, you don't actually permanently own anything. You basically rent things. And that's kind of the model they have, the vision they have for the way that private property will be. Those of you familiar with communism, what you're looking at is basically the communist dream. It's the idea of eliminating private property, right? Abolish private property. This is the communist dream. If you were to read Das Kapital and what Marx envisioned as kind of the end state of communism, this is almost exactly what it looks like. Communism is basically about re-engineering everything in the world, dismantling and destroying the world built from the standpoint of tradition and especially from religion, that basically everything built by mankind through all of history was built under people who believed in maybe God or religion or tradition. And the idea was that first you need to tear down everything, which is why they attack religion so much, which is why they attack traditional beliefs so much. Tear down everything. And then from there, once man has been basically rendered, culturally obsolete, essentially, to remake society in the image of man. What you're looking at right now is that dream, a vision of what they believe that would look like. And yeah, no privacy, no private property. You don't own your home I guess the place where you sleep at and have your normal home. You leave during the day and they have business meetings there. I don't know why people are working in this dream society, but they have business meetings for some reason. You can go work in your little drone factory, working alongside the robots while the AI monitors you. And you can live, if anyone familiar with the way that, for example, Amazon, quote unquote, gamifies their work environment, you can imagine something like that, where basically they turn your work into a game and you have workers getting so stressed out, they're like, just basically killing over from it. That's what they're envisioning. It's some people have framed it as like George Orwell with confetti, George Orwell's 1984, but instead of this bleak and gray world, it has like maybe rainbows or something like that. But every totalitarian system, all the abusive technologies, the monitoring, the elimination of your ability to own anything or create anything or do anything, it's gone. All that's left now is this essentially, well, drone society where AI makes all your choices for you. That's what they're envisioning. That's the model. And the stuff you're in, you go eat your cricket burger or whatever they want to millworm, drink your millworm milk. They're actually making millworm butter. That's the dream. That's what they're moving towards. Let me show you a video. This is also the World Economic Forum. This is actually from 2018. And this is where the slogan that people were criticizing, "You'll own nothing and you'll be happy," this is where it appeared. Just to show you that it's not some conspiracy theory. This is their actual video. Let me play it for you. You get the idea. Basically, a whole lot of promises. It kind of reminds me of the Bolshevik Revolution when Lenin talked about the workers' paradise, right? That was the promise of all the communist movements. You'll live in a workers' paradise. You'll not have to work as much. Everyone will share everything. You won't own anything. There's not going to be any kind of traditional, let's say, superstitions, right? Things like marriage and families and, having kids and having to take care of your kids. All that's going to be gone. The community will do it. We'll have a community that takes care of everything. If you know the Shabbat system in Israel, some people have said the Shabbat system was kind of the most pure practice of communism, where basically everyone is assigned a role in the community. The children are taken from the parents when they're young, and they're raised by the community in their own little areas. The Shabbat system fell apart, of course, and people take that as being one of the purest examples of why communism fails. Because initially you have the true believers, the people who might believe in the system and think they want it at least. They get it, they find it's not what they were promised. And then the next generation grows up, and then you have mothers who have kids, for example, and they say, "I don't want my kid being taken from me. I want to raise my own child." And when the community tries taking their child away, they say, "You're not taking my kid." The system begins failing because there's something natural that I think in the human soul that is in line with traditional culture. And I think there's a reason why no matter where you go on earth, typically you find similar practices among people. People fall in love, people get married, and holds true in just about every community on the face of the planet traditionally, no matter how isolated they were, no matter where they are in the world. You'll find there are certain human traits that we all share. And these things constitute, I think, beliefs and cultures that share commonalities regardless of borders and regardless of anywhere else. This idea that you could just destroy that overnight and somehow build a functioning society based essentially on just some random dream they have. A random dream, I should note, that has led to disaster every single time it's been attempted, and people still don't realize that it just doesn't work. And frankly has caused some of the greatest human suffering the world has ever witnessed. Communism now, I think the death count is somewhere around 150 million. But regardless, there are people like Klaus Schwab and these other folks who just want it, who just want to keep trying it, who think they'll get it right next time, and the people before them just didn't do it right. But back to Lenin, they were promising the workers' paradise. You'll own nothing and you'll be happy. Right? No private property, but you'll be happy. It's a paradise. It's the same narrative, actually. And then as soon as they gained power, as soon as people said, let's create this workers' paradise, what did he say? He published an article and he said along the lines of, you can't have communism without the stage of socialism. And socialism means what he called the state capitalist monopoly. Remember how you used to own businesses? Well, the government now is going to seize your businesses. The government runs the businesses. And you, comrade, you're unfortunately a rightist because you were unjustly taking more than you were due, and you owned a business or you owned property, or you were just a farmer who just did too dang well. And well, now you're a kulak, as they called them. And unfortunately, you need to be killed for the good of the community. And they did that. They killed people by the tens of millions. And when people finally got their workers' paradise, well, you can frankly look at the Soviet Union when people were assigned their jobs and people were assigned their spouses and nobody owned anything and everybody was assigned their place to live and people owned nothing and they were not happy. And I think that's what it comes down to. You can own nothing and you're not going to be happy. And we've seen over and over again that these practices do not make people happy. Also, briefly on that video too, they talk about that America will basically. I mean, this is something crazy. These people are basically. I mean, if you want to talk about actual insurrection, actual traitors, they're talking about overthrowing the United States. Essentially, from its role as the world government. It's I guess they call it the police of the world or whatever, right? America has become, I think, against its wishes. Funny enough. The de facto world leader, the Pax Americana, the peace under America, is basically what has defined the last 100 years of the world. Well, almost, after World War II. They call this the unipolar world order, essentially the idea of human rights, of liberal democracy, of constitutional protections on your rights as an individual, have defined the system under the United States that it represented. There are countries, including, funny enough, Russia, and including Dugin, Alexander Dugin, and Duginism, and including the Chinese Communist Party, who want to end what the United States did. And the narrative they use for that is the multipolar world order, i.e., rather than unipolar, one system governing, they want it multipolar, where it's like the United Nations basically ruling the world. That's what the World Economic Forum is pushing for. And this should be regarded as something meant to basically undermine the United States, because how do you overturn that role the U.S. is playing? How do you destroy it if not by tearing down America? Well, that's what they're doing. You can look at their policies, you can look at their actions. They're tearing down the United States. They're undermining the United States. They're criticizing the United States and everything we stand for and all the values we have and all of our traditions. And they're demonizing it. And they're saying that this needs to be overthrown. If you want to talk about actual insurrection, look no further. Yeah, Sheepdog9, you said on YouTube, please mention... Oh, sorry, this is from someone on YouTube. You say, human nature is the opposite. Even animals own things. Actually... Frederick Bastiat was one of the first people to really criticize the early socialists on this. Great book, by the way, Frederick Bastiat's The Law. It's very thin. You can read it in one sitting. It was a criticism of the Robespierres and the Voltaires of the world, the early French, the early communists during the French Revolution, just ahead of kind of the global shift in governments away from the age of kings, right? Frederick Bastiat criticized a lot of these people, and especially their naturist beliefs, because you had guys like Voltaire talking about go back to nature. We're going to go back to human nature, essentially. And he criticized them, saying, if you think nature is kind, if you think nature is merciful, yeah, go look at the fox and the bird. Go look at the bear and the fish. Go look at the lion and the gazelle. You'll see how compassionate and kind nature is. There's a brutality to nature. And if people believe that just by embracing human nature and any whim that emerges from human nature, which was the basis of naturism, which was one of the main ideas that led to communism, important note, Basically what the early communists believed, and most of them these days believe as well, but they don't know they believe it, is naturism. And naturism was based in a simple idea. There were two different arguments during the debates on religion, and the people who turned against religion, both schools of which led to modern communism. It was basically a push against God. It was an atheist movement. And there were two. Well, it was a satanic movement. Let's be honest. There were two different interpretations. Again, if you want to talk about the actual names of these, the Manichaeans, the Rosicrucians, the Illuminists among them, and a few others, Gnosticism, Hermeticism, which was the cult of Hermes and Osiris. They had two different ideas, and the argument was around why does suffering exist in the world? Why is there inequality? Why are some people born rich, others poor? Why are people born into nobility or peasantry? Of course, this is more a problem you have in the Western world, where they don't believe in reincarnation or the ideas of karma, which in the Eastern systems are used to more describe that. But in the Western world, they came to question, I think, why essentially does inequality essentially exist? Why are some people born sick? Why are some people born healthy? Why do some people die young? If we're all created, equally, essentially, then why do these things exist? I know people are saying because of sin, and of course, in the Christian system, they talk about original sin as well. It was people who didn't really understand religion, in other words. But aside from that point, that was the question. And the people who framed these ideas believed in two separate things. They said, well, either God is imperfect, which is where they get the term the demiurge from. They believe that the world is created by an imperfect God, because they say if everything was created by God, evil was created as well by God. Therefore, God must include both good and evil. They call that the false God, or the demiurge, which they sought to destroy. And they believe that all religion in the world was essentially something to be destroyed. The other side of this was the naturists. And they believed that if everything is of God, then evil is of God as well. And so they believed that you should just do anything you desire to. You find this, for example, with, the cannibal cults in India, for example, who believe it's a Shivite sect. And they believe, for example, that you should just essentially do everything, that nothing should be taboo, because everything is of God, your urges are of God, and they just do everything. These two competing schools, mainly, funny enough, in the West, were manifested mainly in the Rosicrucians and then the Illuminists, both of which kind of coalesced under the Cercle Social of the French Revolution and led to what we know as being modern communism. That's how this whole thing came about. But if you get into this idea of that you should own nothing, that we should return to nature, it's actually a satanic idea. Just being totally blunt and frankly based on verifiable history. That's how this stuff works. Again, it's rooted in a fundamental misunderstanding of religion, if you were to ask me. And I think these people were just, let's call it, rampantly stupid. Anyways, let's go deeper into this, folks. Let's see here. I'm sorry, I was talking about the kibbutz, not the Shabbat. I apologize. I was talking about the kibbutz systems, which in Israel, which are like the socialist communes they have. Actually, in the West, we had those as well under the Owenites and these communes that they had in the U.S. And in fact, the Owenites are pre-Marx. In fact, the Owenites actually were built off the ideas of Sabbatai Zevi, who had this idea of liberation through sin. They believed basically in indulging in sin and doing the opposite of what religions taught. That was the Sabbatai Zevi sect, which led to the Owenites, which led to the communist systems in the United States. Anyways, long history. I won't go into all of it because I could talk about this all day. Let's go deeper into the news, folks. Before we go further, though, I want to talk about Mike Pence and also the program to make us all eat bugs, and also the climate cartel, because, of course, that's the apocalyptic narrative they're using to try to justify all these crazy policies. I'll go into all of that, but we'll go into that on Epic TV, which is our uncensored video platform. Again, I should touch on this briefly before we jump over. I know there's a big debate in the conservative circles around, who is it? around Daily Wire and this whole idea of like, I think they offered one guy like $50 million for a contract, and it's basically in the conservative community right now. There's this big argument around what they call grifters, people who basically were. The argument was that Steven Crowder. Which I should touch on this briefly because some people were calling us and be like, "You guys, are you doing this too?" Steven Crowder came out and he's criticizing the conservative movement and especially like the video channels of basically working hand in hand with big tech. And he pointed to This is important. I'll explain why. He basically pointed to a contract he was making with the Daily Wire because he was going to sign a $50 million contract with the Daily Wire. And he didn't do it because he noted that they were going to punish him if he got censored on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter. Like there was a certain percentage, which if you added up, it would be like 110% of his money that he'd lose, essentially, that he'd have to surrender if he were censored. And he said, well, his argument was, if you're going to censor me, or if you're going to fine me money, if you're going to take away the money you were going to pay me, and I have 25 people to pay, that's what he said. Basically you're not only going to bankrupt me, but you also want to own the show and all this other stuff. And you're justifying this idea of this cancel culture because people can cancel you and they'll know they can financially ruin you. That has started a big argument in the conservative circles over essentially, censorship and the money involvement and so on like that. And punishing people for being censored and a big thing. Daily Wire came back and said, we offered you $50 million. And if we're going to pay you $50 million, that's a big investment and one that could actually damage our company if we were to lose it. And so obviously we're not going to pay you if we can't make money off it. That was their argument. It was it's a big argument right now. I'm only mentioning this because we had people calling and being like, are you guys in on this too? I'll remind all of you that I think I'm already censored on just about every platform. Like, I'm demonetized on YouTube. Facebook doesn't let us advertise. Twitter still doesn't let Epic Times advertise. Epic Times is pretty much censored everywhere. And you might notice we hardly have any advertisements. The reason we hardly have any I think I have one advertisement on the show. I run once a week. The reason we hardly have any advertisements is because I don't do native ads. I'll always mention when I'm doing an ad. We also don't push it that hard. We try to stick more to like traditional standards on it. And also we don't like bow down to advertisers. And so they don't like that. We don't have many ads. We're censored just about everywhere. Most of the way Epic Times just functions is we're supported by readers and viewers. And so subscribing to the newspaper, subscribing to the website, or subscribing to Epic TV, that's how we run. And so we don't bow down to anyone, essentially. The only people we have to be held accountable to are you. We're again a subscription-based service, and that's how we operate. So I'm only saying this because this stuff doesn't really we operate differently than these other platforms. And so I just want to clarify that in case anyone had questions with it. Also, I don't make $50 million. In fact, I've actually turned down several raises. My personal theory with having a company, especially a startup, is I don't ask for much. And I do that because I know that some of the startup shows are not going to make money. And if I ask for too much, that means there's lower budgets for other shows. I've actually turned down several raises for that reason. But anyways, I don't want to dig too deep into that, but I just want to mention that because I know some people did have questions about that. Epic Times, funny enough, is kind of what a lot of these platforms claim they are, which is, again, something standing up against censorship and representing, I think, the viewers and readers. Which is also why we don't actually have a lot of bureaucracy. I don't even run my scripts by an editor, for example. I have a lot of freedom, and I appreciate my freedom. All right, folks, I do have some editing, but anyways, folks, that said, let me show you a quick trailer, then we'll jump over to Epic TV exclusively. Again, those of you on YouTube, Rumble, Twitter, and so on. I do an hour-and-a-half show, and again, I only do about half an hour on YouTube. Let me show you a quick trailer, then we'll jump over to Epic TV for the rest of the episode. We recently had an interview on our show, American Thought Leaders. It's pretty interesting. This is Brianne Dressen, gaslit by doctors and loved ones. Some vaccine injured are making the ultimate choice to end their suffering. I think an important interview. Let me show you this and we'll jump over to Epic TV.
There was a time where I couldn't rest. There was no joy for even a minute in my day. And so I wanted to be done. And I had a plan, and I wrote goodbye letters to my kids. I'll never forgive myself for that, for almost destroying their lives.
Today I sit down with Brianne Dressen, who was severely injured after participating in AstraZeneca's COVID-19 vaccine clinical trial in November of 2020. She is the co-chair of React 19, the leading nonprofit organization aiding those injured by the genetic vaccines.
We want the injured to be empowered to be able to make their decisions and take ownership of their healing when everything around them, their medical teams, their jobs, their government, has abandoned them and essentially stripped them of that power.
She says the NIH knows much more than they let on.
They started flying people out. They studied us. They went so far as to collect samples from someone who had died.
This is American Thought Leaders, and I'm Yanya Kellick.
Again, folks, that's exclusively on Epic TV, and that said, we will jump over now to Epic TV exclusively as well. Please join us there. Again, we're supported by you. It's all of you here making this show possible. Come join us on Epic TV, and I'll see you there. And folks, thank you for being here. I want to go a bit deeper into what's happening with the climate